start.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rajesh.
Thank you. Yeah. So before I start this session, also I would like to thank a couple of people as well from my end. So because from my organization, there were a couple of leads who always encouraged me to do so, and have always given me beautiful tasks to go ahead and accomplish. So firstly would be my leads, Vijay Varnasi and Kishore Yamuchala. So thanks for this wonderful opportunity if they have joined this session. And with all your guidance, I'm just trying exploring my things and trying to give this knowledge, sharing this knowledge to each and everyone. Yeah. So it's all about batch processing, guys. So let me start with a small example. So so where does the batch system, batch processing will be helpful? So it will handle with the for helping us to go ahead and handle the huge data. So in order to handle this huge data from the source system, so what kind of a system it might be? Mostly they might be in the files. When you're getting a huge data, suppose you're getting millions of records, 1 million or 2 millions of records. So reading all the millions of records will take a time. So processing this millions of records, sending this to the end system, it is not possible. It's quite a tough task. So you need to process based upon the batch wise. It means whenever you are taking a batch of records and you're processing it, for example, so there are, for example, 1 million of records where it cannot read 1 million of records at a time. So for this, you need a batch, and then you might say my batch size would be hundreds or thousands. So in a batch of 1,000, for example. And then, so what is that we need to do is we will go ahead and start processing your the batch process, something like, which is there inside your system. So this is inside your Mule, wherein you have updated something called as batch processing. So let's go ahead and start this batch process. So this batch process will take somewhere close to 100 records. Then what exactly it does? This batch process does three steps altogether. First one is load and init, process, and third one is uncomplete. So what does this load and init does? It will split records and into individual records. And then your process section will process these individual records and process individual records, and then your on complete session will give you a feedback: how many have been loaded, how many have been successful, and what are the failures. Yeah. So we'll give feedback on how many have been loaded, how many have been successful, and how many have been failures. So this is the high level of your batch process, basically. Then let's go to the individual steps. For example, so basically it is to process huge records. Huge records in the sense somewhere close to lakhs and lakhs of records. Then we will go ahead and get this So this is to rather write a dispatch. First one. This first one would be an asynchronous process. First thing, completely your batch process. So first, the complete entire batch process is your asynchronous process. The thread starts with your flow, will touch your batch process, and then thread will go outside of your batch process. What will your batch process does? Whether it's when it is an asynchronous process has been done. What would be the first step? Load and dispatch. What exactly it does? So it loads the records. So it loads the records depending upon your batch size, and then it will split the records to single records. What does it do? So then it will keep the records in a queue, basically. So what does this process section will do? It will keep the record in a queue, and before that, this process sections will be divided into a batch steps. Something like, you know, batch step one, step two, and so on and so forth. So it will read the record, and it read the records from the queue and process it. So basically it is executing the batch step. So once after the execution of this batch step, what does it do? So basically, if we have more batch steps, for example, then records would be kept at the bottom, basically. So where exactly it is been kept? It is kept at the bottom of the queue. Then, so basically, to get processed to the next batch step, imagine if you have 100 records in a queue. Okay, so here, so you have 100 records in a queue, for example, over here. So basically, what I'm trying to sorry. So your mule batch step will read the records. So here, so this is a mule batch step. We'll try to read the records. So here, one more part is whenever this batch step, so will have this batch step will have, or rather this batch processing will have multiple threads basically. One more point to be added. Multiple threads, somewhere close to 16 threads. Generally, we have one thread which reads the record and process. Like that, we will have 16 threads. Will have each thread read one record will read one record from the queue, and then it will process it. So at a time, how many times in a few milliseconds we will have multiples of 16 gets processed. So once the processing is done, if it has the next back step, then the process record will be moved to the end of the queue. Why? Because the top of the queue already the records will be going into the first batch step process. Once the all records went inside this, or rather consumed by the threads, and it is been executed by the batch step one, already the process records will be come to the top, and then they will get start processing the next batch step. So that is how it will happen in a cycle basis. After ending the records, it will go to the on complete phase, and then we will record how many have been loaded, how many of them failed. So such information we will go ahead and record it. So this is all about process of your batch step. So let's go ahead and see a small example under the batch processing. Let me get the list. And I want to add a model. I want to read a file basically from the file connector. So just go ahead and drag and drop the read file component. So try to read a file. Imagine we are getting a huge records from the file, and then let me add one logger over here. Let me go ahead and print the files. So just take the batch job. So batch job. So this is for the small explanation which we had just before. This is where it gets loaded. The load and dispatch will happen so that the messages will be going into the queue, and then your process section will be happening. So this is your process record section, and after that the batch step is done. It will go into an on-complete session. The first step which we had decided, load and dispatch, so it will automatically happen. So what is that I'll do? I'll try to go ahead and drop the message in the batch step, for example. And in the same way, let me go ahead and add on complete. So the batch step process, and at the end. Now, so for every process, they may return some Java related or transformation, Java related data. So what is that I would do is that I would be transforming. Now, so when it executes asynchronously, so whenever the control comes here, so the main control after the touching the batch job, the control will go to the transform message. So what would be the payload? So the expectation of the payload, or I will also add one more transform message. Yeah. So payload would be, payload will be basically how many records have been loaded in your batch step. So same, the summary of your batch step will be returned. So what are the instance of your batch job? So let us go ahead and configure the things. Change that report. So I'll just give path as batch process as well. So let me go ahead and read the file. So for the read component, you don't have to do anything. You just need to add it and click on OK. So there are no much configurations in the for read component file. And I have a part which is already there. Let me run the payload over here. Send it. It does. Then it runs your mission and then log on. Same thing. So as of now, I'm not doing anything. I just need a batch stub. It has been read. The record has been read. So I'm just giving an input to the batch stub. At the on-complete stage, what is the result? So result has been converted into a JSON. After triggering the batch job, what would be the payload? So basically, so this is your input for your transformation, where what are the total records being loaded into your queue. So after the load and dispatch, what are the total records? How many have been processed? How many have been filled? So all this information will be available at the end of this batch job. So 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 as of now, I have a file which is there in this location. Let's go ahead and see. So this is the file, the sample file which have been created. So if it is there, it will go ahead and process, or else it will go ahead and throw me the error. So let me add a breakpoint over here. Debug the process. It's taking a while. Go straight.
Yeah, hi Rajesh. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I can see there is one question in chat.
Okay. The entire 1 million request load into the link load, and this might cause out of memory. So we will process that in a batch wise, Dilip. So that is what I mean to say. So we will process that into a batches. If you have listened to my explanation at the initial stage, we will do that in a hundreds and thousands of batch size. So based upon that, we will be processing it.
No, no. I think what he want to understand, like there will be once we will do read operation from this file connector,
Mhm.
then entire record will be loaded in memory. So Dilip, is this same understanding? Same thing you want to know? Like what will happen if this we will perform read operation, then entire data will be loaded in memory. Dilip, let me see. You have you can unmute yourself or not? Where is Yeah, I think you can unmute yourself, Dilip, if you want to have like active discussion. You can unmute and let's have a discussion. What I can
Yeah,
okay.
hi. So,
Yes,
the basic question was right. So we were loading, say, 1 million record, right?
yes, yes,
1 million
correct.
record, be it in file database somewhere, right? And if we are
Yes,
doing a load and dispatch, while it breaks it into multiple batches of say 100 or 1,000 records each, right? For that,
yes,
the entire data set has to be loaded into the memory. Memory
yes,
meaning it can be your uh, Java memory, or it can be your Java, sorry, Mulesoft worker memory, right? It has to be
yes,
loaded somewhere.
correct.
It will not directly go and operate on the file or go and operate on your database, right? The entire data set has to be loaded somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, got it. So here what you need to do, okay, based on the like, see, there may be record having very small size and there may be record having bigger size. Okay. So first you need to see your what will be like total size of your 1 million record. Okay. It may be 10 MB also, it can be 200 MB also, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if it is like too big, either you can increase worker size. Okay. You know, vertical scaling we have, you
Yeah,
can
that is
increase
there.
worker
Yeah,
size.
that is always
Okay.
there.
Another, yeah, another option what you have, can you go to a file read operation? There we have streaming option. Okay.
Yes.
So in streaming option, you can define how much like you can do like you can split your file while loading. You can split your file into multiple you can say stream or multiple batch. There also you have that kind of configuration. I think that will be inside advanced. Once you will click file read operation, it should be inside advanced.
Streaming option is there. It will read the file contents in chunks, right?
Yes, correct. So
But in
here
that
what you are
case
doing, if it
also,
is
yeah. But in that
if
case
it is
also, we would not be
okay,
having then. I mean, there would be a time, right, before breaking it into multiple batches, right, of the batch size which we have specified. The entire content has to be in the memory at some point of time, right? Even if we are
that's why
reading
we
it
are
in,
doing
yeah.
means if you will do streaming option, then entire data will not be loaded at a time. First, it will load the partial amount of data. It will do processing, then it will load second set of data. That's why this streaming capability we have,
Okay,
file
but
streaming capability.
okay, but there is some confusion here, right? So, say I'm having 10 records, right? And if I
Okay,
enable streaming, wherein I say that I want to read one record at a time, right?
okay,
I read first record, right? I processed it,
yes, yes,
right? And then that I'm not going to write it back to the file. It will be in the memory only, or the queue, the 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 batch queue which we are saying, right?
no, once it will be processed, then why we will maintain inside queue? Once it will complete all the steps
No, no, no.
of
I'm,
batch.
I'm just asking about the first row, right? I'm having 10 records. My streaming size is say one record at a time, right?
Yes,
My streaming size is one record at a time. And I'm saying my batch record is batch size is two, right?
okay,
So first time I'll read one record from the file. Then I'll read another
yes,
one record from the file, right? Then it will complete my one batch, right? Then I'll put that batch into the queue because the entire file is not ready yet. right? That will
Mm,
go into the
okay.
queue, right? Same way, I'll read all the 10 records, even we are enabling the streaming, right? Then all those 10 record has to be in the memory at some point of time. It's not loaded at the same time, but yes, even if sequentially this file contents are loaded, the entire content has to be there in the memory.
Okay. What I have understanding for streaming, it's not like it will like all the data will be loaded first, then it will do further processing. It will start the loading and it will start the processing. It will not wait to load the entire data. What I know about streaming.
No, because
But,
this is what I'm saying with my practical experience. Okay, because we are
okay.
processing a large amount of data from S3 bucket, right?
Okay. Okay. Yes.
And there, the entire file has to be loaded. Right? The entire file contents was to be loaded, right? And even streaming would not work here. Right? That is what I have observed, and that is where I mean that question came into my mind, right? So there also we
Okay.
had to
Okay.
do the same thing. We had to increase the worker size, right? And we
Yes.
have to increase basically not the worker size, but the V codes we had to increase, right? And then
Yes.
it
Yes.
added some, and even this processing, right? The data we processing will again take some time, right? Because this entire, if you're
Yes.
saying you are loading a batch size of say 100, and if you're performing some operation inside your batch step, right? Then again that will also consume some space and some time, right? And there also you might go into memory constraints. This is just my thought which I came across.
So your S3 connector, like, have you checked in S3 connector? Are they supporting that streaming option or not? Similar
No,
to
no.
file connector.
Yeah, streaming option. I mean, it was. I don't think S3 is having a streaming option, but I didn't check that an option. That time, I was not able to find that option. Right? If they have added it recently, I'm not sure.
So Dilip, sorry to interrupt. So how much data you are loading? You are loading from the S3 at a time. How much data you are loading? To be
No,
precise, like
my file size was big. My file size was
okay,
big.
okay. So when you are creating a file out of that, now suppose you
It
get
was an Excel file. Okay, it was an Excel file.
Rajesh, can you go for a mute on a
Oh,
mute for
sure,
a
sure.
while? Yeah. So now suppose if you are loading, like I can tell you on my past experience, like I was working with Salesforce where I was getting almost 3 to 4 lakh data once at a time when I was fetching the data, and then I need to create a file out of that. In that, where I have used a batch size, say something around 500 aggregation, we can say now. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and then I have created, so it was working with zero point 0.1. If I don't use aggregator, then it's give me heap size error, because what I was doing is I was loading all the data, and at the same time I was
No,
trying
no,
to process the
aggregator
complete data.
basically, yeah, I understood that.
Ha.
Aggregator we can use for say
Slicing the size, like not at a time. I don't want to send all the data, I want to send it part by part. And also, like, the parallel thread will be working in batch.
aggregator is the other way around, right? Aggregator is basically we are grouping the data instead
Hmm?
of sending the data one by one. We'll group them in a batch of say 100 or 10,000,
Correct.
and then yes.
Correct. So in batch, again, you are not sending the data one by one. Even though you are streaming, that doesn't mean you are sending one by one. Okay. So
No,
if
no,
we are not
it was
using,
not the, yeah, it was not
ha,
the issue while writing to the file or while performing the operation on the file.
mhm.
It was the issue while reading the file from the source.
Okay, so in that case, like, that depends again, like how much data you are reading. Like
Yes,
I
yes.
have
So the,
worked with 3 to 4 lakh data, and it worked fine.
no,
Maybe for
three to
you the
four
data
lakh
is
data.
more lakh.
Okay, okay. Ravi,
Uh,
sorry,
Abhishek,
Abhishek.
uh,
Okay, so 3 to 4 lakhs data might be just few kbs of data, right? And
maybe.
even say 2 lakhs data. Sorry, 10,000 data can be 100 MB of data, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Depending on the size, correct.
Yes. So that we cannot correlate this with the number of
Number of
records.
amount. Yeah,
Basically, the size of the each individual entity, right?
correct.
So that is where this issue came because this entire
Hmm.
thing was loaded into your
Correct. First it will load and then it will process like
Yes,
the
then it
further
will break.
steps.
Yeah, then it will break it into the batches, and so basically, batch is not basically you can consume, you can save on time.
Hmm.
Sorry, you can save on just the time because it will enable parallel processing, but you cannot save on your space. That is what my
Space.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more question from Shubham.
To add something here.
Yeah, yeah, Rajiv, please.
Yeah. So, Dilip, in fact, for you it is like when we do streaming, right? Streaming, it reads the file, right? But it maintains it on hard disk. It's not maintaining the data on memory. Okay. So once you do file streaming, it will read the data from file, but it will maintain its uh, own data in the queue on hard disk,
The
not in
hard
memory.
disk meaning what? Hard disk is your worker space only, right?
Yeah, space, but then you have hard disk, right? That's not an issue.
And
Issue
the
is
hard
with the
disk, if you
memory.
are running it, if I am running it in Cloud Hub, then
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In Cloud Hub, you have got ample hard disk space, right? You can always ask for. It's only the memory which is costly, right? It's not
no, no, no,
the
no, no.
hard disk
I
which is
think,
costly.
yeah, maybe I might be wrong, but there is some memory, some hard disk memory associated with your uh, V core subscription, right?
Right, right,
Like
right.
if you are going for point 1 V core, there will be 500 MB of hard disk. If you call it a hard disk, or if you call it memory, right? So
No,
that
no,
is what is
there are
allocated to you.
two different things. Two different things. Memory is RAM, right? You have limited RAM, and if you try to increase the RAM, the cost will go high. But if you ask for hard disk space, that will not cost you that high. So you
But
can
you
always
cannot
ask for hard disk.
configure, I mean, as per my understanding, you cannot ask for customized hard disk, right? It's associated with your vCore configuration, default configuration only.
That is your heap memory. That is not your hard disk. What you are talking now, that is heap memory. Like let's say if you are taking zero point 0.1 vcore,
Yes.
then like you will get 500 MB heap memory only.
And
Okay.
then what is the hard disk memory there?
Yeah, that part is still I am not sure that
That is
I,
the hard, I mean, heap memory, hard disk memory is the same thing. You will not be having any other memory other than that, right? It's not like we can get any additional memory where we can load GBs of data. That is not possible. That I'm sure of.
yeah, okay. Then maybe this question is a bit tricky question. We should have more detailed discussion. So
Yeah,
what?
because this is what the real time scenario, and I just wanted everyone to be aware that if you're someone is thinking that we can with batch processing, we can execute 10 GB of data with point 0.1 vcore, that is not going to happen.
Yeah, that is like that is 100%. That is not possible.
Yes.
Batch processing will only increase the performance of your API, not the capacity in term of like size and all.
Yeah. Thanks anyways. Yeah. Thanks a lot, team.
Thanks for the question. Okay, let's continue. Or any questions before I start?
Also, just one more question to add on. So, what if the record size is actually less? I mean, is it still recommended from the performance standpoint to go ahead with batch processing? Consider I'm having around 20, 30 records only, maybe less than 100. So, in that case, is it still recommended? If I go ahead with say batch processing, will it still hamper the performance or it would be the same?
No, there is no performance issue as of such. So, but again, based upon your what do you say, the requirement, basically, in that case, for even for 10, 20 small size, there's something called as for each scope also comes into picture.
Yeah.
So in that case, so that is totally upon you what kind of a processing you need at the end of the what do you say? Basically, when you need a output, desired output.
Okay.
There is no such performance issue in that
Okay.
case.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let me send this request. So the application has been deployed. If you can see, so this is the payload as of now, which I have. Now, what will happen? So the main thread is able to trigger your batch processing. So try to observe the loggers. So main thread will trigger your batch processing. That is something like your dispatch. So just see. So let's go ahead and observe our instances. So this has been started loading phase. So if you can see, it has started the loading somewhere. So let me expand this. Just look into this particular instance. It has created an instance for batch job, and it has been started loading phase, finished loading phase, and it has started the execution of your instance. So why the control is not gone into this inside the batcher? It is a simple process. Different threads will has to process this batch step, and then once it comes out, now I am transforming the payload. The same thread. So different thread went inside the batch step, and the main thread control gets the main thread. So when you have multiple threads are getting executing, your CPU will allocate one after the other threads. So that is something like round robin fashion kind of a thing. So when two threads are there, CPU needs to exit. So CPU will execute sometimes this particular thread, sometimes another thread. So this is how you'll get this. So records count. So when it was created for the creation time, you have a record time count which is fixed. How many records have been loaded? 6. How many are failed records? As of now, nothing. So what are the successful? Nothing. So it is just initiated. What is the status of your batch job? So as of now, it is in executing stage. So it is executing your batch job. Great overview. So this is what it looks like. So your main thread completes. So your job already completed, already control came here. So it has printed your first record. It has read the data from the queue and it has printed the first record over here. So it has executed the batch step. So what is happening over here? So when the control comes here, it had split the all the records and then it had moved into the queue. It came into the batch processing and then it is executing other steps which is there inside your main flow apart from the batch step. Now the control is there at the batch step. Already it went once. Now again it will go. It had printed first record previously. Now it will process individual records by different threads, and after that, once completing all the records, so example I had taken 6 records, so then it will come to the incomplete phase. So now I have converted that into a JSON and you can check the things. So now how many records have been loaded? 6. Total records are 6, and how many have been, sorry, this is where total records. This is where loaded. How many have been failed? None. Successful 6. So you just printed here. Once you have this record, it is up to you what kind of a processing you want to do. You can do that inside your batch job. At the end, you will have in your on complete step, you will have all the summary of your batch execution. So this is the summary of your all your batch execution over here. So then what would be the other changes which we can do with this records? So with this records, for example, we are reading what do you say, something like we are reading some data which is there inside the payload. Then we can transform this something as application Java payload. As of now, we are getting individual records, or rather something like yes, yes. So as of now, data payload dot s number, just using the basic transformation, and I want my entire marks stored marks, for example. Once my transformation is done, I will let me go ahead and send the records to my end system. Basically, sorry, this has to be a comma. So when you have one batch step, when you have more than one batch, as of now we don't have any batch step. So what is the processing logic generally we do? So the processing logic would be we go ahead and transform the data, and then we go ahead and send this to end system. So your processing logic as of now at a time, how many records it has been processing? It is processing at a time. So it is processing one record as of now, if you can see. So how many records you can send this at the end system at a time? So it can be one only. So say you have something like some millions of thousands, as the discussion which we had, some million crores. So it is not feasible amount to go ahead and call 1 million times, right? So for that, something called as aggregator comes into picture, your batch job. So whatever the records it is processing, whatever the records it is been processing over here. So let's go ahead and get this aggregator. So whatever the records which are being processed, so something we have an aggregator over here. So what does the aggregator does? So when you're processing an example, huge record, something like some huge amount of records, so you need to call those much of amount. So so your batch processing is picking, as of now it is picking at a time as only one record at a time. So it might be also, you can go ahead and change, it might be 100 records or 1,000 records, whatever it has been loaded. So at least 1,000 times you need to call it to your end system. So you have something called as batch aggregator. I want to combine all these records over here, and then based upon the size, I will go ahead and combine them. So aggregator say, as of now, let me process the 3 records to process. So take those 3 records and you do processing. So what processing I can do? I can write the data inside a file. So what is my file name? So if I use the same file name for the first iteration and second iteration, then it gets overridden. Then I have to use the different path altogether, something called as unique file name. So in that case, let me go ahead and use use- so let me go ahead and create a unique file name based upon my timestamp. So for example, so now So this is me giving me in the GNT format. Then let me go ahead and use the milliseconds. Now dot milliseconds or nanoseconds. So it will give me the unique number all the time. So let me go ahead and take this as a nanoseconds, and let me go ahead and update into my file name. Let me go ahead and use this. And then what I'll do, let me go ahead and write the content, something like, let me explain this. Let me go ahead and get the path over here, the same path, or else I'll create a new folder. So this is my path. So as this is in my expression mode, so let me code that into a quotes. Whenever there is an expression, guys, you need to add one more slash file connectors. Just thought to give a heads up. Yeah, so this is done. And then we go ahead and concatenate. I'll use some name. Let me go ahead and give, I'll rather give it here, students. Hyphen. And then I'll just give name. I'm just concatenating the file name and then give some extension dot, something like this. So what is the file name I have? .xml, or rather I'll use CSV itself as of now. Let me go ahead and read the CSV file. So, so whatever the content, let me go ahead and put application by CSV. And a payload. Yeah. Let me see if I need to. So this is the extension for my particular file. So as for the sake of printing for the reference purpose, let me keep a log over here. This is file written. Let me save this. Let me go ahead and send the request. So it has read the file. So whenever we have a number of records, it will try to split the records or split the data based upon the size. So for example, as someone I mean, 1 GB of file you have, it cannot read 1 GB of your file at a time. It will stream the data. So it will go ahead and, so if you can go ahead and see, Just let's maximize. Someone had raised this topic, so just thought to give a small explanation. So it it has its memory size, kept the data inside your file, and then it gets execute your logic. So imagine it has streamed some data, out of which when it comes to your batch process, how many records does your batch process is loading. So as of now, it is loading a block of 100 records. So file read return you 1000 records. First, it will load 100 records of your block size. So as of now, we have only 6 records. 6 records gets loaded when batch process has been triggered. When batch process has been encountered, first step it will do is your main thread will give you a load and dispatch work. So this will look into a load and dispatch work. Then it will go inside the batch process, which will have, so both have been started parallelly executing. So your different threads have a time now, something like TPU, and that thread has been connected to your batch step. Inside your batch step, again I execute this, then control will go to your main thread. So control will go into main thread. So this main thread will have a summary, how many records have been loaded. So once this is done, now your main thread execution completes, and then your batch process will have a control. So what is happening? So it has load and dispatch. It has all the records which has been moved to the queue, something like over here. So something like 1100 records. So all the records have been split in the individual record has been added inside the queue, and then all these threads inside your process section, your process record section, something like a batch. So each thread gets your record from the queue. So maximum there are 16 threads that will give you 16 records, and then the individually it will start recording or executing individually. So as of now, I'm transforming the record. Again, this is a second record. So this is transforming. So until where? So it is entering. It is not entering to. Once the aggregator size is met, then it will go inside the batch aggregator. So we have given 3. So this you will have. It will try to go ahead and write your content. So whatever the content which you are here, let's go ahead and evaluate this expression. Okay, it cannot cause. Let me go. Let me check. So it is an mule expression. So whenever you are receiving a CSV data, let me go ahead and change. So so this is in a Java related format. Let me do it and convert that into a Java related format. Oh, sorry, not here. So let me go ahead and create. I need to convert this into a Java related format first. First, I need to convert the record into a Java related format. So before your batch up, keep a transformation. Let me go ahead and convert this application into a Java. So there are a couple of different types which we need to convert. One of the type would be a Java. So let me go and execute the same thing. So this time it has been converted Java related program. So it gets based upon your batch job aggregator. So 3 records will be executed by your batch step. Now comes to the aggregator. Then if you can see, it went to the right and it has been able to written the, so write your records. So it has been updated in my records. So this is my record which has been written, and these are the records. So previously this was the input which I had sent. So what is the input? It has processed the input, then based upon the iteration it went ahead and gave me the out. So it has been executing three records and the aggregator. The same way it does the same thing. It has updated, completed. So this is completed. So I have got one more file. So then it will give me how many have been, it has been processed. Again, you will get all the details over here. So this is how it will uh, execute all together. Any questions till now? Nada.
Yep, we have a lot of.
Yeah. And let's read it. How many max threads? So as I mentioned, there are what is a multiples of 16 threads. It will be there, Sri. So, or else are you talking about the same worker size or you're talking about? Okay. Let's see this one. Okay. So when we can the record is in the queue, and when the record will finish, it's when we can the record is in queue, and when the record will finish its process. I did not quite understand your question. What do you mean to say is when we record this in a queue, and once the record is finished, when that record will finish its process?
Okay, so maybe she's asking like when the record will be in queue and the when the record will be processed.
Okay,
So
yeah, if you can understand the explanation over here, whenever there's a batch size or so if you can see uh, based upon the processing batch step, so it goes into asynchronous process. Once it gets into the queue, then it gets it so when it gets accumulated, then it goes into an on complete process. So that is how it gets processed. So this is based upon Tejasvi. It is based upon the thing whatever you configure over here. So when does the second batch step starts? So if you have a multiple batch jobs, so over here so basically based upon the record size, so you can go ahead and give in the record size configuration over here. So based upon that it will execute if you have a multiple batch steps to be processed as per the requirement. Use the data to end system, or end system might not respond properly for some time, gets response time on. In such cases, not with agree as per the speed of batch process with push data to end system, or end point system might not respond properly for some time and get response time. So in that case, we use failed records. So that I would be explaining Sri Reddy. So how exactly the failed records based upon which we will go ahead and check it out. What are the failed records? Is it because of the response timeout or something? We go ahead and give those what do you say, the certain criteria. Correct me if I'm wrong. So in this case, I haven't looked into this particular type of error, Abhishek, or
Yeah, hi. This is not like means the processes happen while writing.
hmm.
This speed is very much high. Batch processing speed is high,
Yes.
but sorry, but at the time of this server responding at the other end,
Hmm.
that is not so speed.
Hmm.
So that's the reason it's getting timeout. Response means there is no issue with the batch process.
Exactly, because
Yeah,
of the
yeah. While
continuous
batch,
processing.
yes, correct. While batch updating to the end process, then that response time is bit less to this batch process time. Then we are getting that response time out.
Yeah, so there are certain kind of what do you say performance issue, more or less, with the batch processing of both systems. In order to save, it has the current data resulting. Sometimes it will lose order based upon the efficiency also. So that is basically upon the order flow volume, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, volume and maybe these two are in different regions.
Different regions. So
Yeah,
they
that
might be a
means
server issue as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
these are the issues we are currently occurring. Any suggestions, ideas if someone have?
Yeah. So in that case, we will go ahead and what do you say? There's something called as failure state, which we have in the job instance. So that is where we will go ahead and try to get one more batch step inside whatever the failure records which comes into it.
Yeah, okay.
Or is there? So if anybody wants to share any other process, if you think that there might be an alternate solution for this,
Can we use until successful to get the successful response from that server?
we can try that. So until successful, based upon connectivity issues, we can
Yeah,
go ahead and try that.
yeah, that we are trying, but what happens is it's a bit
But
costlier
still,
now.
hmm,
Yeah, because of every time it's checking that process and sending again, no, that become costlier. Definitely.
We can do one more thing, right? So inside this aggregator, put in so don't process it from your aggregator, right? Don't execute any system operations from your aggregator. Rather, put everything into your VM, the virtual memory, right? And from there, you trigger that database operation or whatever it is, and enable your transaction mode. So until and unless that transaction is successful, that word record won't be deleted from the VM, right? And that is how we can achieve to have a successful delivery of message to the end system.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks for that. Then we have how to integrate data into memory iterations in batch, like if we are having 100 MB. This I'm not sure with this with regards to data. I think I will pass over this to Abhishek or Ravi.
I don't think we can know like how much memory we have, or like we can distinguish with the base of memories. We can distinguish uh, with the count of inputs we are getting. Like if we are getting 100 records, and if you want to process five at a time, that we can do. But Janaki, I'm not sure. Like with respect to the memory, we can do it. If you have any rough figure, okay, I'm getting this much I'm loading this much input and the memory is this much, and maybe you can have some percentage over there, and you can find, suppose if you have 100 messages coming, each of 1 MB, so you know, okay, I am getting 100 MB and I need to process 5 MB record. That means five record at a time. That way you can do with respect to number, but with respect to memory, I'm not sure. Like this much MB we are getting and this much MB we need to process. That would be quite difficult to uh, iterate in that way or make a logic in that way on respect to memories. Anyone want to add, like if they have came across anything like with respect to the memory? Maybe Dilip, which you are saying, anything you have in your mind for this? No. So Janki, I'm not sure. I don't think we
Sorry,
can.
yeah, I was speaking on mute. Let me share
Okay.
one link here. Okay, if you can open this, so there you will see how much memory is allocated to each V course, right? And we have this worker memory and the heap memory, right? So this is, so point one V core, we have the worker memory, which we can call it as a disk memory or disk space, right? And 500 MB is your processing memory or your RAM kind of a thing, right?
No, that's fine. But what Janki is asking, like, suppose he is getting 100 MB of memory, input with 100 MB, and he want to aggregate 5 MB at a time. So
But
like
that would be a calculation based on
yeah,
the individual record size, right?
correct. We cannot calculate like while making the batch processing, we cannot calculate correct in that way.
We
We need
cannot calculate it that
huh,
way. Yes.
we need to get an average like what input we are getting and what is the size of that input. On
Yes.
the basis of that calculation, average thing we can
Roughly, yeah. Roughly,
roughly
we
we
can
can
allocate.
do,
Yes.
but we cannot guarantee like every time we will get that much, and we are just whatever memory we are, whatever size of the payloads are, with respect to that we are getting a certain memory we are
That is what
processing. That is not possible.
that is what we discussed, right? For
Yeah,
me, 1 million record can be 200 MB, right?
correct, correct,
And at the
correct.
same time, one say 1,000 record can be 1 GB of data, right?
Data, correct,
That is something which will vary from you. Sorry, which will vary from use case to use case, right?
correct. Okay, we can go to next, Pradeep.
Yeah. So, what is the use of max concurrency? Good question. So, basically, this max concurrency, as per my knowledge, it is used to specify how many ever the number of records you have, or basically based upon your threads, which can be processed simultaneously. So, that is where you can go ahead and give your span over there. So, that is the reason we will be having this usage of max concurrency. Okay, so in case of more batch steps, how are records processed sequentially or process? So basically, it's a synchronous process. So based upon the records which you have, it as per my knowledge, whatever I have done, so it processed through a sequential itself. And also, can you talk about the error scenarios? So let's discuss a small scenario with regards to the error scenario since batch processing. So that is what I would be explaining in the next. Yeah, I think
Okay,
that's all.
one question we left, I think, or maybe like if you answered. Arunab has asked, so what's the final answer for Dilip question? While entire data get loaded at once or data get loaded in streaming way? So, Arunab, we didn't get into any conclusion, but what we have found, out of our experience, what we have seen, like ideally it loads all together. But again, it's is something which might depend on your connector, like well, that connector is having a streaming option or not. Okay, but we didn't get came up to a much situated conclusion over here, because we had different scenarios. Like I had a scenario where I am taking it from Salesforce, where I have some amount of data, and at while processing I put aggregator and I have processed to create a file. But in case of Dilip, like he's facing issue because they are getting a lot of data from the S3 bucket. Okay, so it depends on the connector as well, like that connectors is having any streaming options or not. Because whatever we have found till now is we are loading everything at the same time all together in a batch. Okay, maybe this is something which we need to dig more on it. Yep.
Yeah, so batch processing, it's like I feel everything is like it's a not a same small thing. So which we go ahead and explore many things in each of the processing part. Thanks, Abhishek.
Yep, we can continue.
Yeah, so I think the conscious of time. Let me explain. So probably we need to take this at the next session as well. So probably I will explain about the error part. So how exactly? So for example, to check the payloads. So how after the transforms, now my condition would be suppose while processing the records. So while, for example, I'm processing the records. So I'll put a choice. Then when my payload, something like payload dot student number, some equals to, sorry, equals to some 4. So something had happened. So it has raised an error. Just for the sake of raising an error, showing an error, Well, just mention. So something you're processing. So something like, so you have six records. So for example, fourth record has been filled. So what is that I need to do? So generally when, so do I need to go ahead and continue? Then in that case, who will tell me that do I need to continue this process, or do I need to stop it, or do I need to go ahead and execute something else? So in that case, suppose I'm moving an accounting interest, for example, from one system to another system. Say a big organization is there, they will maintain something called as a general ledger. So general ledger means something like the P&L accounts, profit and loss accounts. What are the expenses and what are the incomes which comes in? What are the incomes and expenses? So they maintain a general ledger. So suppose these kind of information that comes into a general ledger. So the company says or informs us. Example, something like Reliance Store or Airtel Store. So, for example, entire India, you might have some hundreds and thousands of stores. Something like they will charge some amount for tea break, snacks break, or something. So they want to reimburse. They would like to have an entry for this. So every day throughout India, for example, we may have some lakhs of records, millions of records. So which comes in. So in that case, we need to integrate that thing with our accounting system. So with regards to the batch, so in one of the records, you got an error. Instead of entering amount, they have entered some description by mistakenly. So in that case, you will get an error. So what does it happen? Can we go ahead and ignore and post the remaining entries? It is not possible in the real-time scenarios. Okay, so based upon the dependency of your business process, then imagine in such a case, if one fails, nothing you have to process. So for example, there's no issues. So in this case, we will try to go ahead and imagine what is happening. We will, I'll just keep this logo over here. Sorry. Yeah. So let's imagine. So let's go ahead and see what is happening when there is a failure happen. No, let's process. Let me go ahead and initiate this. Now, let's go ahead and look into this. Sorry, just still processing. Okay, let me go ahead and hit the run again. So let me go ahead and hit the first record, second record, and third record. So this is my second record. So this is my third record. Before it gets failed, you're sending data to your end system. Some part of the data has been sent already. Then you will get a failure. So there's a failure which was occurred. So you have already posted some part of the records. Then what is that you will do? So that is where your, what do you say, your batch steps comes into picture. So what is that you will do is, by default, every batch step will mention what is my, for example over here, what is my batch block size, and sorry, yeah. So in this case, what is my batch block size? And this is my black batch block size. And what are the maximum failure records which will allow? So what we will do is we will divide. We can go ahead and divide our batch step into multiple steps. So for example, you can go ahead and process all the records. I'm just trying to explain the scenario. So wherein you can go ahead and use this batch step over here. So for example, you can see this. Just go ahead and step one, you will process all the records, and in step two, you will process all the failed records. Basically, sorry, yeah. So this has something like two batch steps, something like you have two, so one and two, and then you can go ahead and add a necessary sections over here. In this first step, you will go ahead and process, and you will aggregate and send the data to your end system. So based upon this, it will segregate, and separately it will go ahead and give you all the scenarios in a, whether how many have been successful, how many have been failed. So let's go into a small presentation. So what happens? It will send the process to your target system. So large input size you have, and performs actions on these individual records, and it will send the process data to your target system. So basically, so it has reports of the results, and then potentially pushes the processed output to other systems and queue. So which is available only in the enterprises. Understand? So this is how the batch job works. If you can see, it's a similar kind of explanation which we had. So, how a batch job contains one or more batch steps. So if you can see, you have a one or more batch steps upon which from the input payload a fixed block of records which is sent through the batch job process by all the batch steps. And then, so based upon this, how what it will do. So each batch job contains three different phases, as I mentioned: load and dispatch. It was performs behind the scene work. What does it perform? It splits the payload into collection of records, and then it creates a queue, and inside that, so for example, so this is how it is there. So so one record, it gets pushed. So what does it do? It process. Batch step is a process. It asynchronously process the records where multiple threads gets processed, which process through separately, and this process steps contains more than one step. Once on complete comes to it, it reports all the summary of your records and provides insight what how many have been failed and how many have been processed. So from the input payload, so your fixed so for example over here, so first it is been splitted up, and then it will be queued, and whatever the records which are taken from the top of the queue, one at a time, and sent to the first batch step. So as per the graphical representation, if you can see, this is how it gives you a proper explanation. Several threads may process multiple records in parallel as well. So this is how it has been sent. So at a time, all the 16 records by the 16 threads. So one record will complete it, and then it will move at the end of the queue. And then all the top 16 records has been consumed by the 16 threads. And this record will become a first record, and thread will move to the batch step. So that means, for example, 15 records out of 16 records, out of 16 records, one first record gets processed, completed, and then it will move to the end of the queue, and the remaining threads will come and collect the first records, and first set of records are all been went into the batch step one, and it gets processed. One record is out, it completes the process and gets added into the queue, so which gets existed into the previous, so only when one records which gets existed for the processing, though the previous records are in the processing stage of batch step one. Then sorry, if a thread is available, then thread will pick the already processed what do you say already processed a record and move it to the batch step 2. So it means previous records which are still running under the batch step 1, the other records which has completed the batch step 1 will be moved into the batch step 2. So like this, if you have whatever how many batch steps you have, it will complete the execution of batch step, and finally it will go into your on complete step. So here, so so this is where, so on complete step. So before going into the on complete step, so that is where your aggregation size comes into picture. You will aggregate the records and then you will send it to the end system. For example, instead of using your separate API call to upsert each request to service, then what we do is we will collect them in a group. So we will collect them in a group and then send it basis on the 100 records to your end system. So that is where your aggregator comes into picture and it will help you. So it will to, so for example, calling 100 times, to avoid that, you can use one call to go ahead and send 100 records. That is where your aggregator comes into picture. So this is where, sorry. And then as we have looked into it, so we also looked into the variables, how to create a batch job availing the batch scopes, and inside batch step, each and record which persists across all the batch steps and processing phase, commonly used to capture whether or not record already exists in a database. So this is one of the example which which I have updated over here. So based upon that, so there's one more slide which I missed on. Yeah. So I think you will have a performance how the records are being skewed within a schedule of 100 and contribuable value. So based upon that, handling recorded errors as well. So if a record has been failed to process by a processor in a batch step, then three options: you can stop the processing the entire batch, one thing, or else in-flight steps are finished but other steps are skipped and the on-complete phase is invoked. So this is one record, and you can continue processing the batch. So how can you do it? You need to specify how subsequent batch steps should handle failed records. To do this, you need to have a separate batch steps which can be filtered, that are converted into next section, and continue processing batch until max number of failed records. So as I mentioned in this particular example, if you can go ahead and give what is the number of maximum failed records, so based upon that you can go ahead and give the what is it, the figures over there, and then at the point of on complete phase it gets invoked, and that is how your batch step go ahead and work in this particular scenario. So this is a small example which I had shared. Hope I did not cover entire thing, but at least how exactly you can create multiple batch steps and how to use a batch aggregator. At least the basic stuff, people who are pretty new to the batch job, how to go ahead and execute. Probably this might be helpful. So 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 that is all about from my end. So any questions before we go into the next phase of session? And anybody who would like to add few more steps which you would like to, maybe in your real time basis you might have experienced something, so you can share your knowledge as well, small points.
We can check in chat also.
Yeah, as of now I don't see anything.
Okay. 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 Then I think we are good. And thanks, Rajesh, for this wonderful presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Ravi.
Yeah, it looks you explained very well, and you have given very in detail knowledge on this batch processing. Okay, so we'll give 2-3 minutes of time if anyone has any query on this batch processing part.
Sure.
Okay, it seems we don't have any open queries. So what we can do? Meanwhile, we can go for Kahoot, but only one constant, like one thing is there. So far, it's not 1 minute. Okay. Meanwhile, we can stop recording also.
Okay.